Hi, welcome back to Quilt Addicts Anonymous, and I'm teaching you how to make a t-shirt quilt. In the last video, we learned how to cut out the t-shirts to make the blocks, and now we're going to cut out the interfacing and fuse them to the back of those blocks so that the t-shirt material won't stretch when you're sewing it together in the quilt. And the first thing you want to do is buy teflon quilter's grid interfacing. You can tell that it is the quilter's grid because it actually has a grid on the background. And it really doesn't matter if you follow the grid when you're cutting. The main important thing is to make sure that you have a nice straight edge on the side and that you cut nice straight square blocks. So to do that, I've already cut a straight edge here, so you can see that when I line the ruler edge up, that the edge of the ruler is flush with the edge of the interfacing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up so that the 1-inch line of my ruler is even with the fold of the interfacing, and then also even with the side of the interfacing. Then I'm going to hold my hand on the side so that it doesn't shift. And then I'm going to slice down the side of my 12.5-inch block. And since you have to move it, I'm kind of pulling this back so I can still see my straight edge. So that way I can line it up with the edge here, and then also with the edge that we've just cut. And cut again. And then one more time in order to make it all the way down to the end of the fabric, or the interfacing rather. Alright, once you've done that, you can start cutting the block out of that. And from there, we're going to cut 12.5-inch blocks to go on the back of our 12.5-inch t-shirts. So, while our edges weren't lined up before, I'm going to line them up now, so that way there will be less waste. So I'm lining up my two edges, my cut edges, as well as the edges that we would normally call a selvage in regular fabric. And I'm going to over measure a little here, because this isn't always straight and at a right angle. So I'm making sure I have my edges lined up with the edge of my ruler here. And cut with my rotary cutter. And pull that to the side. We'll use that in a minute. And now I'm going to turn this around. Make sure everything is still nice and lined up because we have two layers interfacing here. Put my ruler back on. And slice again. And that gives me two interfacing squares. And I'm going to stack those with the grid side up for now. And then we can get one more square out of this. So now I'm unfolding it so that it is nice and flat. Laying my ruler down. And I'm going to cut one more project line there. And these extra pieces that you have here, they can still be used for other things. They make really great if you're making a memory quilt out of a child's clothing. These smaller pieces can be cut up to go on the back of children's onesies or t-shirts. In this case, though, I need one that's 12.5 by 6.5 inches, and this is going to be just wide enough to do that. So I'm going to reuse this piece there. Alright, so that is how you cut all the interfacing. Now I'm going to show you how to fuse it to the back of your t-shirt. And for that, you need an applique pressing sheet. These are made out of teflon. The one I have is from Fons & Porter. You can get it at Joann Fabrics. And always use coupons when you go to Joann Fabrics. So you can get a discount on that. And I've already pre-cut. We're going to use one of the 6.5-inch blocks that we cut to make form them together to make a 12.5-inch block. So I've got my piece of interfacing, and I'm going to put it with the printed side, it's the smooth side, down, so that the bumpy side is up. That's the fusible material that is going to stick to the back of your fabric. So we have the front side of our t-shirt and the back side. We want the back side to face the bumpy part of the fusible interfacing. So I'm going to line that up one corner at a time. And I'm going to put my iron on it and just hold it just for 5-10 seconds. And I can tell that that is fused together. And then I'm going to move to the other corner. And sometimes you kind of have to stretch the fabric a little bit because sometimes the t-shirt kind of shrinks in a little on you when you cut it. So I'm holding that again for 5-10 seconds to get the other corner good and set. And it is. So now I'm going to do the center. And then you just are going to proceed in this fashion as you go around the quilt block. You want to get the corner and then the center and get all your edges in place first before you fuse the center. Because if you fuse the center in the wrong place, then you're not going to be able to stretch that corner to where it needs to go later. So you always want to start with your edges first when you're fusing. So one more corner here. Kind of just moving that real lightly with my fingers into place so that it's covering the interfacing below. And then get my edges. Got one more center here to do. And one thing to keep in mind is you never, ever, ever want to put the hot iron on ink, on the screen print, without this Teflon sheet underneath it, because the ink will come off and it will get all of your iron and you'll have a mess. So once you get your corners fused, like we have here, you can see that there's like a little, it's still loose in the back and the center, where we have to do the motif. So I'm laying my Teflon pressing sheet over that. I'm just going to lay my hot iron on it. This time I leave it for about 15 seconds or so that I'm sure that the heat really goes through to make sure that that fusible web attaches to the fabric. And then I'm going to move it over and do the other side. And if you have a shirt that has new ink on it, be very careful when you peel the Teflon pressing sheet back, because sometimes the ink will want to lift off and stick to the Teflon pressing sheet. But if you go nice and slow, there will be nothing to worry about. And the ink will stay where it's supposed to on the t-shirt. And if it is coming off a little, just let it cool for a second. It'll reattach where it's supposed to be. And then just peel it back very slow. There's a little bit of ink coming off here. So I'm going to let it cool and sit for a second. There we go. Now we've got it off, and our interfacing is now completely fused to the square, and then they're ready to sew. So go through and make sure you cut as many pieces of interfacing as you have t-shirts in the sizes that you've cut them to match. And then next week I'll show you how to sew them all together and cut the sassing strips to go in between them. So come back next week to QuiltAddictsAnonymous.com for more on how to make your own t-shirt quilt.